The alien city glittered with towers of glass and steel, shining under three suns. In the tallest of them all, a contract was waiting. On the top floor, inside a hall wide enough to fit a ship, alien leaders and lawyers stood around a great silver table. At the head of that table sat Zorak Velnar, the richest alien in the quadrant. His fortune built entire colonies, his name shaped markets, and his word could start or end wars. Today was supposed to be his greatest victory. A new contract lay before him, glowing with golden letters promising endless profit and power. The syndicate who brought it swore it would secure his empire forever, but someone else was in that hall. Not a leader, not a lawyer, not even a guest. He wore plain gray clothes, carried a mop, and pushed a bucket that squeaked on the shining floor. He was just a human janitor, one of the few allowed to work in alien towers. His name was Daniel. Nobody noticed him, because nobody ever noticed the one who cleaned. Yet Daniel noticed everything. As the alien lawyers bowed and handed over digital pens, Daniel's eyes drifted to the contract screen. He was far away in the corner, but his human eyes caught something strange. The golden letters shimmered, but between them, hidden like shadows, were words in another code. Most aliens could not see them. But humans had learned long ago to notice traps written between lines. Daniel froze, his hand tightening on the mop. His heart pounded. He saw phrases that should not exist, binding for generations. Ownership transfer. Unbreakable law. His throat went dry. This was no deal. It was a chain. If Zorak signed, his company, his wealth, his family, even his future children would belong to the syndicate. The room was filled with laughter and the smell of sweet alien wine. The lawyers clapped politely, pretending to celebrate. Zorak leaned forward, the pen hovering above the first line. Cameras were recording. Every alien in the room smiled, waiting for history to be written. That was when Daniel did something no janitor had ever dared to do. He stepped forward. His shoes squeaked. His mop dripped. His voice came out low but sharp enough to slice through the laughter. Don't sign that contract. The room fell silent. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward him. Guards twitched, ready to draw weapons. The lawyers hissed in disbelief. Who was this? This human to speak? Zorak paused, his hand stiff. He turned his head slowly, his silver crown gleaming under the lights, his sharp alien eyes fixing on Daniel. For a moment, the richest being in the quadrant stared at the poorest one. What did you say? Zorak's voice was soft but heavy. Daniel swallowed, but he did not back away. His voice grew stronger. Don't sign. It's a trap. The lawyers erupted with outrage. Silence this creature, one shouted. Throw him out, another hissed. A guard stepped forward, his weapon humming with energy. But Zorak raised his hand. The room froze again. His eyes narrowed. Explain, he said. Daniel's mouth was dry. He knew one wrong word could mean death, but he also knew that silence would doom Zorak. He lifted his chin. Look between the lines. The words shine in gold, but the shadows hide chains. If you sign, you lose everything. The aliens laughed, a cruel and sharp sound. A janitor speaking of law? They mocked. A human cleaner teaching us contracts? Yet Zorak did not laugh. He looked again at the contract, then back at Daniel. There was something in the human's eyes, not arrogance, not madness, but fear mixed with certainty. Zorak had lived long enough to know when someone truly believed in what they said. For the first time in his life, the billionaire's hand trembled. He lowered the pen. His empire, his pride, and his future balanced on one decision. Silence stretched across the hall. Every breath felt heavy. Every second longer felt like a lifetime. Daniel's voice broke that silence again, soft but firm. Don't sign that contract. Zorak leaned back in his chair. His crown tilted slightly as if its weight had suddenly grown heavier. His eyes never left Daniel. He did not speak. He did not sign. He simply sat frozen, the golden letters flickering on the screen like a trap waiting to spring. And in that moment, the richest alien in the quadrant canceled history with a single pause, but it was only the beginning. The silence in the hall stretched too long. The golden contract still glowed on the silver table, waiting to be signed. But Zorak Velnar did not move. His sharp alien eyes were locked on the human janitor standing across the room, mop dripping onto the polished floor. Everyone else held their breath, unsure if they were watching the end of the human's life. Or the end of the billionaire's empire. "Bring him forward," Zorak said finally. Gasps rose from the alien lawyers. The guards hesitated, confused. No one expected mercy. No one expected curiosity. Yet Zorak was not like others. He had built his fortune not only with wealth, but with instinct. And something in the human's warning gnawed at him. The guards grabbed Daniel by the arms and shoved him toward the table. His mop clattered behind, forgotten. He stumbled, but kept his eyes steady on Zorak. When he reached the table, he stood between kings and killers, his gray janitor uniform stained with soap and dust. Compared to the jeweled robes and metal armor around him, he looked like nothing, less than nothing. Still he spoke. "I told you. Don't sign." One alien lawyer sneered, his teeth sharp and yellow. "This human dares speak of law? His kind knows nothing beyond cleaning floors." The room filled with cruel laughter, but Zorak raised his hand again, silencing them. His deep voice echoed. "And yet he saw something you did not. Explain, human. What do you claim to see?" Daniel's voice was steady now, though his heart thundered in his chest. "Between the golden words there is another language. Hidden clauses. They shine like shadows. No alien would notice. But humans, we learned to notice tricks. We suffered them once long ago, and we do not forget." The hall fell quiet. Zorak leaned closer, his face carved from stone. "You mean slavery," he said slowly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, that contract is not a deal. It is a cage. Once you sign, everything you own will belong to them. Your ships, your cities, even your bloodline." The alien lawyers erupted again. "Lies, madness!" one cried. "This human speaks poison," shouted another. But their eyes betrayed them, nervous flickers darting toward the syndicate representatives at the far end of the hall. Zorak noticed. The billionaire turned his gaze back to Daniel. "And how would you, a janitor, know of these hidden chains?" Daniel took a breath. His hands were trembling, but his words came out clear. "Because I clean where others do not look. I see what others ignore. And I read what others cannot." It was true. While others mocked, Daniel spent nights reading scraps left behind, old alien scripts, contracts, records. His mind collected secrets the way his mop collected dust. To the rich he was invisible. To the powerful he was nothing. And that invisibility let him learn truths no one else saw. Zorak studied him in silence. He felt something stir deep within, something he had not felt in decades: doubt. His empire had been built on trust in his advisors, his lawyers, his syndicate partners. But trust was fragile. And now, standing before him, was a human nobody, pulling at a thread that could unravel it all. At last, Zorak spoke. "You are either the bravest fool in this quadrant, or the only honest voice in this room." Daniel did not blink. "I'd rather be a fool who speaks than a servant who stays quiet." The words cut deep. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably, as if the human's courage had pierced the air itself. Zorak sat back in his throne-like chair, his crown of silver casting shadows on his face. He tapped the contract once, twice, as if listening to its heartbeat. Then he looked at Daniel again. "If you are wrong, human, I will see your body turn to dust before the sun sets." Daniel's chest rose and fell, but he did not back away. "If I am wrong, you lose nothing. But if I am right, you lose everything." The billionaire's lips curled, not quite a smile, not quite a snarl. He had faced assassins, traitors, and rivals, but never had a human janitor stood in front of him like this. Finally, Zorak waved his hand. "Guards, release him." The chains of grip fell away. Daniel stood free, though danger still surrounded him. The alien lawyers whispered angrily among themselves. Some looked at Daniel with hatred. Some looked at Zorak with fear, but none dared challenge the richest man in the quadrant. Zorak leaned forward, lowering his voice so only Daniel and a few nearby could hear. "If you see the trap, then show me. Prove it. Show me the cage hidden in this contract." Daniel nodded slowly. His heart still pounded, but now something stronger stirred inside him. Purpose. He stepped closer to the glowing contract. His fingers hovered above the golden words. "I'll show you. But once you see, you'll never look at your empire the same way again." And in that moment, the human janitor, small, ignored, invisible, became the most dangerous man in the room. The pen still lay on the table, its golden tip waiting. But now it was no longer a symbol of wealth. It was a weapon. And Daniel was the only one who knew how sharp it truly was. This was not the end of the warning. It was only the beginning of discovery. The silver hall grew colder. The golden contract still glowed on the table, but now every alien eye followed Daniel, the human janitor. He was no longer just a shadow pushing a mop. He was the one who dared to see what no one else had seen. Zorak Velnar, the billionaire, leaned back in his tall chair. His crown tilted as he rested his clawed fingers on the edge of the table. "Show me," he said. "Show me what no one else has seen." Daniel stepped forward. His plain uniform looked out of place between the jeweled robes of alien lawyers and the sharp armor of guards. His fingers shook, but his eyes were steady. He reached for the contract. The glowing letters shifted, dancing like fireflies in the air. To most, it was only golden text promising wealth and power. But Daniel squinted, letting his human eyes adjust to the faintest flicker. And then, like cracks in glass, he saw them, the hidden shadows. "There," Daniel whispered, pointing. "Look between the spaces. Look at the faint black marks that don't belong." The aliens frowned, confused. They saw nothing. To them, the words were perfect. But when Zorak leaned closer, he felt something strange. His vision sharpened and faint outlines shimmered between the golden letters, symbols that crawled like insects. "What is this?" Zorak muttered. Daniel's voice grew stronger. "It is law written in codes only a few can see. Binding codes. This clause here," he pointed at a faint line. "It says your wealth will pass into the hands of the syndicate after one cycle. This one says your ships and ports will be given to them as security. And this one," Daniel's jaw tightened, "this one names your family. Your bloodline becomes their property until the stars fade." Gasps filled the hall. The alien lawyers tried to laugh, but their voices cracked. "Nonsense," one shouted. "Delusions of a human mind." Another slammed the table. "It is only decoration, nothing more." But their eyes betrayed them. Sweat formed on scaled foreheads. One lawyer's hands trembled as he pulled his robe tighter. Zorak's claws scraped against the table, leaving marks in the silver. He glared at his lawyers, then at the syndicate representative standing quietly at the far end of the room. They had been too silent, their smiles too calm. Now their eyes glowed faintly as if enjoying the game. "You planned this," Zorak said, his voice low and dangerous. "You brought me a crown made of chains." The syndicate leader, tall and cloaked in black, did not deny it. Instead, he smiled. "It is not a chain. It is destiny. With this contract, you step into eternity. You should thank us." "Eternity as your slave?" Zorak spat. The leader shrugged. "Power has many names." Daniel's fist clenched. "Don't listen to him. Once you sign, there is no escape. These laws were written ages ago, back when humans were still fighting for their freedom. I recognize them. They are designed to look beautiful, but they bind tighter than iron." Zorak stared at him. You have seen such traps before?" Daniel nodded slowly. "On Earth, long ago, powerful men used contracts to take land, labor, and lives. My ancestors signed papers they did not understand. For generations, their children paid the price. That is why humans learned to read between the lines." "We never forgot." For a long moment, Zorak said nothing. The weight of the truth pressed down on the hall. Even the guards shifted uneasily, their hands twitching near weapons but unsure whom to point them at. Finally, Zorak rose to his feet. He towered over everyone, his crown gleaming like a blade. His voice shook the hall. "I should kill every one of you who thought to trick me." The syndicate leader's smile never faded.
"Kill us and the galaxy will call you mad."
"Sign and you will be praised. Which will you choose, Zorak Velnar? Honor or power?" The words echoed like poison. Zorak turned, his eyes falling on the human. Daniel stood silently waiting. His mop still leaned against the wall, dripping slowly onto the shining floor. He was small, weak, nothing compared to the giants around him. Yet his warning had stopped the richest man in the quadrant from walking into a trap. Zorak's claws tightened into fists. For the first time in his life, he felt truly cornered. His empire was a mountain built on trust, and now that mountain was shaking. Daniel spoke again, his voice soft but clear. "You already have power. But if you sign, you will lose honor, and then everything else. Don't let them write your future for you." The hall trembled with silence. Every alien waited. The contract glowed brighter as if hungry. The pen on the table gleamed, waiting for a hand to seal fate. Zorak's chest rose and fell, heavy as thunder. He looked at the lawyers, at the syndicate, and then at the janitor who had dared to speak. His mind burned with anger, but deep inside, something else stirred, respect, because in the end, only the human had seen the trap, and now, the billionaire realized the most dangerous enemy was not across the table. It was already inside his empire, wearing the robes of his own trusted advisors. This was no contract. This was treason. The golden contract still hovered on the table, glowing like fire trapped in glass. But no one dared touch it now. The lawyers stood pale and silent. The syndicate leader's smile had thinned, but his eyes still gleamed with dark amusement. And at the center of it all stood Zorak Velnar, the billionaire who had almost signed away his entire empire. He turned slowly, his long cloak brushing the floor, and spoke in a voice like thunder. "All of you out. The guards, the lawyers, the syndicate representatives, every alien in the hall froze. None dared argue. They bowed, muttered weak excuses, and left the chamber one by one. Only two figures remained when the tall silver doors finally closed with a heavy boom. Zorak Velnar and Daniel, the human janitor. For a moment, silence pressed down like a weight. The room was empty now, but the contract still glowed, casting golden shadows across the walls. Zorak's sharp eyes fixed on Daniel. "Follow me," he said. Without another word, the richest being in the quadrant turned and walked toward a hidden door at the back of the hall. Daniel hesitated only a second before following. The door slid open, revealing a private chamber far smaller than the hall but more secret. Its walls were black stone, its lights dim, and the air hummed faintly with scanners designed to block spies. This was Zorak's sanctuary. No advisor, no lawyer, no guard ever entered here. But now, a human janitor was walking inside. Zorak moved to a crystal console and summoned the contract again. The golden letters rose like smoke above the black stone table. He turned to Daniel. "Show me everything." Daniel stepped closer. His hand hovered above the glowing script. His eyes searched the shadows hidden between the bright words. "Here," he said, pointing. "This clause pretends to be about trade routes, but the hidden code says they take control of all your ports within one cycle." He moved his finger lower. "And this?" "It looks like a promise of shared profit, but it's not profit. It's ownership. They get your ships, your fleets, and your resources. It leaves you with nothing." Zorak's jaw tightened. His claws scraped the table. "Go on." Daniel pointed to the deepest shadow, almost invisible. "And this one is the worst. It says that if you resist, your family will be considered collateral. That means your heirs, your children, even your grandchildren would be theirs forever." Zorak's crown tilted forward as his head lowered. His shoulders rose and fell with heavy breaths. Rage burned in his eyes. He had built his empire across 100 worlds. He had crushed rivals, bribed leaders, outsmarted generals. Yet the deadliest strike had not come from war. It had come from a contract placed politely in his hands. His voice shook the chamber. "My own lawyers prepared this." Daniel nodded grimly. "Yes, they are part of the syndicate. They smile in your face while selling your empire behind your back." Zorak slammed his fist into the table. The golden letters flickered, breaking apart for a moment before settling again. "Traitors," he growled. "I trusted them with my empire." Daniel's voice was quiet but sharp. "That is how traps work. They don't come from enemies outside. They come from voices you already believe." For a long moment, Zorak said nothing. His silver crown caught the dim light, but it seemed heavier now, like a chain of its own. He finally looked at Daniel, and in his eyes was something rare. Not anger, not arrogance, but the first flicker of respect. "You should not know these things," Zorak said. "You are a cleaner, a human. How do you see what no one else sees?" Daniel hesitated. He remembered the stories told by his grandparents, of Earth long ago. Stories of false papers, broken promises, and chains hidden in words. He remembered nights in the alien towers, cleaning up scraps of old contracts, teaching himself to read them, line by line, shadow by shadow. He answered simply, "Because my people once lived through the same lies, and because I pay attention." The billionaire studied him as if weighing the human soul. Then Zorak turned back to the glowing contract. He waved his claw and the words broke into streams of light unraveling in the air. Hidden codes burst out, filling the chamber with dark symbols like crawling insects. Zorak's lip curled. If this contract had been signed, my empire would already be theirs. Daniel nodded. That was their plan. Zorak's claws dug into the table. And I would have signed without knowing. I would have smiled as they placed chains on me. The anger in his voice was not just fury, it was shame. And shame was something Zorak Velnar had never allowed himself to feel. Daniel stepped back, but his words remained steady. It is not too late. You did not sign. You still have your empire. Zorak turned his sharp gaze on him. And I have enemies. Yes, Daniel said. Enemies who sit in your own house. The chamber grew silent again. The golden letters faded, leaving only the dark stone walls and the quiet hum of hidden machines. At last Zorak spoke, his voice low but heavy with decision. If I cannot trust my own lawyers, then I will find out who else is corrupt. I will tear this contract apart line by line, and I will discover how deep their betrayal goes. He leaned closer to Daniel. And you will help me, Daniel blinked. Me? You are no just, Zorak interrupted. You are the only one who saw the trap. That makes you more valuable than any lawyer in my empire. You will stand at my side until this is finished. Daniel's chest tightened. He had come here to mop floors, not to fight syndicates. But looking at Zorak, he knew he had no choice, because now the richest being in the quadrant trusted only him. The private chamber hummed with silence. The golden contract was gone now, broken into streams of light and scattered codes. Only the dark symbols remained, crawling in the air like invisible chains. Zorak Velnar stared at them with burning eyes, his silver crown heavy on his brow. They thought they could own me, he growled. They thought they could own everything. Daniel, the human janitor, stood quietly at his side. His plain gray uniform looked small against the black stone walls, but his presence felt larger than it should. He was the only one who had seen the hidden trap. He was the only one Zorak trusted now. The billionaire turned sharply toward the console. With a wave of his claw, he summoned streams of data, layers of transmissions, contracts, secret logs, all hidden beneath the surface of his empire. His voice was deep and cold. If my own lawyers are traitors, then I will see who else is feeding the syndicate. Lines of alien script filled the air. Numbers shifted. Codes spun like constellations. To most, it was meaningless. But Daniel squinted, scanning the faint shadows. His human eyes caught something strange again, patterns repeating where they should not. Stop, Daniel said, pointing. There, look at that sequence. It's not random. It's a transmission. Zorak froze the symbols. His claws tapped against the glowing code. Slowly, the words unraveled into something new. Secret messages buried deep inside the cleaning drones that swept through his towers every night. Daniel's stomach tightened. He knew those machines well. He worked beside them, ignored them, repaired them when they broke. And now he realized they had been more than machines. They had been spies. They've been watching you, Daniel said quietly. Every hall, every office, every whisper. The syndicate knows everything. Zorak's eyes narrowed to slits. His voice was a low rumble. So even my walls betray me. More transmissions appeared. Hidden recordings, coded reports, and messages sent to unknown receivers. But Daniel recognized the mark. It was the same dark script he had seen in the contract. The syndicate's language. They wanted you blind, Daniel said, but they wanted you surrounded too. That way, even if you discovered one trap, the others would already be waiting. Zorak's jaw clenched. His empire was vast, but he could feel it shrinking around him now, suffocating like a cage, and the realization cut deep. This was not only betrayal. It was war. At that moment, the chamber lights flickered. A sharp tone rang out. Zorak's eyes snapped to the console. Incoming transmission, he said. The symbols twisted into a face. Cloaked in black, eyes like burning coals, the syndicate leader appeared. His voice was smooth, mocking. Zorak Velnar. I hear you hesitated. Zorak's claws dug into the stone table. You dare send me a cage and call it a contract? The leader smiled, slow and cold. A cage? No, my friend, a gift. One you were too blind to accept. His eyes flicked toward Daniel and the smile sharpened. Ah, the human. So it was you who spoiled the game. Daniel stood his ground, though his pulse raced. He could feel the weight of that gaze, dark and endless. The syndicate leader's voice dripped like venom. You think you saved him, little cleaner? You only delayed the inevitable. The contract was only the beginning. We are already inside his empire. We own his secrets. We own his people. And soon we will own you too. Zorak roared, his voice shaking the chamber. I will burn every syndicate world before I kneel to you. But the leader only chuckled. Such anger. Such pride. You should have signed, Zorak. It would have been easier. The transmission ended in a hiss of static, leaving only silence and the faint hum of machines. Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His hands trembled, but he steadied them against the table. He looked at Zorak. Now you know. They won't stop. They'll push harder until you're broken or theirs. Zorak turned slowly, his tall frame casting a shadow over the human. His voice was heavy but steady. Then we push back. Daniel blinked. How? The billionaire's eyes burned with fire. By finding every traitor. By tearing apart their spies. By making them fear what they cannot control. His gaze lowered to Daniel. And I cannot do it alone. You will stay. You will see what others cannot. You will be my weapon against them. Daniel hesitated. He was only a janitor, a cleaner from Earth. Yet here he was, standing at the side of the richest alien in the quadrant, chosen as his secret shield. His throat was dry, but his words came out firm. If I stay, they'll come for me too. Zorak's lip curled. They already have. The words hung in the air like a blade. Daniel knew they were true. The syndicate had seen him. They had marked him. His life would never be the same again. Still he nodded. Then I'll stay. Zorak raised his claw and slammed it against the console. The chamber shook as alarms spread through the tower. His deep voice thundered across the system. Seal the contracts. Lock the ports. Arrest the lawyers. Let no one leave this tower. And in that moment the enemy was revealed. Not just in shadows, not just in whispers, but standing clear as day. The war for the Empire had begun. The alarms echoed through the tower, sharp and relentless. Red lights flashed across the silver walls, bathing everything in a glow that felt like blood. Zorak Velnar stood tall in the center of his chamber, his crown tilted forward, his claws clenched tight. He had made his choice. The syndicate would not take him. Not with contracts, not with lies, not with chains hidden in golden words. Outside the chamber, chaos erupted. Guards stormed the halls. Doors slammed shut. Lawyers screamed as soldiers dragged them away. Some resisted, shouting about rights and law, but their voices cracked with guilt. They knew their betrayal had been uncovered. Daniel, the human janitor, stood beside Zorak, watching the Empire shake. His chest tightened as he realized what was happening. This was no quiet correction. This was a purge. The syndicate had planned to control everything with a pen. But now, war would decide the future. Zorak's voice boomed, heavy as thunder. Bring the syndicate to me. If they want chains, they can wear them around their own necks. But the syndicate was already moving. They were not fools. Their cloaked agents, hidden among servants and advisors, began striking inside the tower. Explosions shook the lower floors. Drones turned against their masters, firing at guards. Screams rose like smoke from the grand halls. Daniel staggered as the floor trembled. He grabbed the table for balance. They're inside already, he said. They were waiting for this. Zorak snarled. His eyes burned like fire. Let them come. This is my tower, my empire. I will not kneel. The chamber doors burst open. A group of guards stumbled in, dragging one of the syndicate leaders. Cloaked in black, his eyes glowed with malice. His hands were bound, but his mouth curved into a smile. You think this ends with me? The syndicate leader hissed. You have already lost. Every city you own, every fleet you command. Our hands are inside all of them. Tear me apart and 100 more will rise. Zorak's claws lifted sharp and deadly. For a moment, Daniel thought he would strike the alien down right there. But instead, Zorak leaned closer, his voice like ice. Tell me why you wanted me to sign. Why not simply kill me? The leader's smile widened. Because signing would make you complicit. It would make the galaxy bow to us, not with fear, but with law. You would have destroyed yourself with your own hand. That is more elegant than murder. Daniel stepped forward, his voice cutting through the heavy silence. But he didn't sign. And now the galaxy will see your trap for what it is. The syndicate leader's eyes shifted to the human. His smile faded into a snarl. You, the cleaner. You are the stain we could not scrub away. Daniel's heart raced, but he did not flinch. You underestimated the janitor, he said quietly. The words stung like a blade. Zorak turned sharply, raising his claw for silence. His deep voice filled the chamber. Enough. The choice is made. He looked down at the contract still hovering in fragments of golden light. For hours, for days, for years, every decision of his empire had been about power, profit, and control. But now a single decision would shape not only his future, but the destiny of his people. The syndicate wanted him bound. His advisors wanted him blind. His empire wanted him strong. And the human, this strange, defiant human, wanted him free. Zorak reached for the golden pen. Every eye in the room followed. Daniel's stomach dropped. Wait, what are you doing? The billionaire held the pen high. Making my choice. The pen gleamed under the red light. Zorak lowered it, not toward the contract, but toward the floor. With one strike, he drove the pen into the stone. The tip shattered, golden sparks bursting in the air. The contract's fragments flickered and died. Gasps filled the chamber. The lawyers who had betrayed him cried out. The syndicate leader cursed, and Daniel let out a breath of relief. Zorak's voice roared over the noise. I will not sign. Not now, not ever. If the syndicate wants my empire, they will have to take it from my dead hands. The chamber shook with his words. Guards raised their weapons. Loyal advisors cheered. Betrayers trembled. But the syndicate leader only laughed. Even bound, even beaten, he laughed. So be it, Zorak, you have chosen war. And war is a contract written in blood. We will sign it with yours. Before anyone could react, he bit down on something hidden in his mouth. His body glowed with sudden light. Daniel shouted, Get back! A blast tore through the chamber. The syndicate leader was gone, his cloak nothing but ash. The explosion cracked the black stone walls. Smoke filled the air. Daniel coughed, his ears ringing. Through the smoke, he saw Zorak still standing, his crown crooked but his eyes burning brighter than ever. The billionaire turned to his guards. His voice was steel. Send word to every world. The syndicate has declared war, and war they shall have. Daniel stared at him, his chest tight with fear and awe. The contract was gone, but the choice had been made. Zorak had chosen defiance. He had chosen freedom. He had chosen to fight, and now the galaxy would burn. The tower shook long after the explosion faded. Smoke curled along the black stone walls, and the smell of ash clung to the air. Guards rushed to seal the breaches, dragging away bodies of the traitors. Loyal advisors whispered in fear, while the few remaining lawyers hid their faces, ashamed. But Zorak Velnar stood tall in the broken chamber, his silver crown tilted but unbroken. His eyes glowed like fire in the smoke. He had chosen. He would not kneel. He would not sign. And beside him, small in his gray janitor uniform, stood Daniel. His face was smeared with soot, his hair damp with sweat, but his eyes were steady. The human had been silent as the alarms rang, silent as Zorak roared his defiance. But now, as the chamber quieted, Zorak turned to him. You, the billionaire said, his voice deep and heavy. You saved me from chains I could not see. You uncovered betrayal in my own house. Tell me, human, why? Why risk your life for me when you had nothing to gain? Daniel hesitated. For the first time, he looked away, his eyes falling to the cracked floor where the pen lay shattered in sparks. His voice came low, almost a whisper. Because I know what it feels like to be trapped by words you didn't understand. Zorak's sharp eyes narrowed. Explain. Daniel took a breath. His voice grew steadier, though it carried the weight of centuries. Long ago on Earth, my ancestors signed contracts they could not read. Papers that promised work but delivered slavery. Deals that looked fair but stole everything. Generations were chained not by weapons but by signatures. That memory lives in us. It never leaves. That is why I saw the shadows in your contract, because I have lived with their echoes all my life. The chamber grew silent. Even the guards lowered their weapons, listening. Zorak's jaw tightened. For a moment, the richest being in the quadrant saw not a janitor, not a servant, but a man carrying the scars of his people. He spoke slowly. So that is your secret. Not power, not wealth, memory, history. Daniel nodded. Yes. My people survived because we learned to see chains before they closed around our necks. That is our strength. That is what makes us dangerous to those who hide their traps in gold. Zorak studied him. Then, for the first time in years, the billionaire laughed. Not with cruelty, not with mockery, but with something close to respect. The sound rolled through the smoke-filled chamber like distant thunder. A janitor, Zorak said. A human janitor teaching the richest empire in the stars how to see. Daniel gave a faint smile. Sometimes the ones you ignore see the most. The billionaire's laughter faded and his eyes grew sharp again. Then hear me, Daniel. You are no longer a janitor. From this moment, you are my advisor, my watcher, my protector against chains I cannot see. Daniel blinked, stunned. Me, but you, Zorak interrupted, his voice like steel. I can buy armies. I can build fleets. I can crush planets. But I cannot buy what you have. You see what others do not. That makes you more dangerous than any weapon I own, and more valuable. Daniel's chest tightened. He had never imagined this. Never imagined standing beside the most powerful alien in the quadrant as his trusted shield. Yet he knew it was true. He was no soldier, no lawyer, no king, but he carried a secret his people had guarded for centuries, the ability to see hidden chains and survive them. Before Daniel could answer, the alarms rang again. A guard rushed forward, bowing low. My lord! Reports from the outer colonies, syndicate fleets are moving. They know you refused the contract. They are preparing for war. Zorak's eyes burned brighter. He lifted his crown with one clawed hand and set it firmly on his head. Then let them come. The guard hesitated. My lord, they outnumber us. Their spies are everywhere. We may not— Enough, Zorak thundered. Numbers mean nothing. Fleets mean nothing. They tried to chain me with paper and they failed. Now they will try to chain me with fear. And they will fail again. He turned to Daniel, his gaze sharp as a blade. Will you stand with me? Daniel swallowed hard. The weight of the moment pressed on him. The syndicate would never stop. They had already seen him, already marked him. His life as a quiet janitor was over, but deep inside he knew he could not walk away. Yes, he said firmly. I'll stand with you. Zorak nodded once. Then we will tear their contracts apart. Not just mine. All of them. Across every world they own. We will show the galaxy that no one signs chains again. Daniel's eyes widened. All of them? The billionaire's voice was fierce. Yes. If they can use law as a weapon, then we will make truth our weapon. You will find the shadows. I will bring the fire. Together we will burn their empire down. For the first time, Daniel felt something new stir inside him. Not fear, not defiance, but purpose. He was no longer just a cleaner. He was the memory of his people, carried into the stars. He stepped toward the wide window at the back of the chamber. Beyond it, the alien city stretched under 3 suns, glittering with towers and ships. Somewhere in that endless light, the syndicate was preparing its next move. Daniel's voice came soft but steady. This was only the first contract. There will be more. Zorak stood beside him, his shadow vast and heavy. Then let them bring them. For every hidden chain they write, we will break 10. Together, the human and the alien looked out over the city, silent but unbroken. The war had not yet begun, but their choice had already changed everything. And the galaxy would never forget the day a janitor taught a billionaire not to sign.